say, next year at this time, they said, well, we're coming up now.
I went up 4 now.
I'm ready to have it off the agenda.
Yeah. Mine was up. My house went up 105. Business went up 50.
You might be the best I've heard yet.
Winner.
Over a 50% increase.
Mine was 40. Mine was 40.
That was close to food.
I was right in there. You said
I know, I'll do some research.
Oh, yes.
All right, I got 5 o'clock, so we're gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. Begin with the routine business. Open Meetings Act posted on the northwest wall. It's been a recent statutory change, so we've got the newest version posted up there on top of the old version. Lisa, could you go ahead and call the roll?
Dustin?
Here.
Heather? Here. Brad?
Yes.
Kent?
Yeah. Here.
Everybody's present and accounted for, thank you. Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everybody. Move on to item 2, the consent agenda. As always, you can consider all items in one motion, or you can, if there's something you want to look at individually, you can do that.
Didn't have anything.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Go ahead and call roll.
Heather?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Kent?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. Move on to the mayor's appointments and reports. That's going to be brief. The fishing was pretty good.
Order. So we're having a fish fry?
We ate them up there.
Oh.
He didn't bring any.
But, yeah, I haven't been around much, so thanks for keeping things going in my absence. And no appointments tonight. Move on to item 4, public hearings. We don't have any hearings tonight, so we're on to old business. And the first item, I would like to make sure that this is not on next month's agenda. We've kind of been kicking it down the road. No harm in that, but I think we just need to make a decision. I don't know that there's, unless you have a crystal ball, I don't know if there's a right or a wrong decision. So we can consider taking that offer from Tower Alliance for $170,000 buyout, or we can stick with the monthly payments that we've got going. So.
After what Lisa's report she sent out to us, I think I like that deal of, if we do take the $170,000, that say a year from now they decide to tear that tower down or do something different, we get to keep that money and start a whole new contract. Is that correct?
Well, basically, the perpetual lease is tied to the physical tower. So yeah, if they decommission the tower, it's not a perpetual lease on the land.
Right.
So should something go back there, it would be a.
But if it fails in a storm?
It's their
It's
tower.
a new tower? What if a tornado comes? Just that spot. I mean, is that the way you understand? Not that it's-
I don't, because I don't know on a repair, but I mean,
Yeah.
like decommission it, it's.
You know, if we, you know, one thing I was thinking, and we discussed a little bit, if we did take the $170,000, I'd like to take that money and put it in a separate account, and maybe draw some better interest on it, and it's something that we could, you know, maybe use that for seed money for a future project, you know, grant money or something like that, and have a little extra seed money for a project, and then we're done with it. We don't have to worry about this coming up again. If we leave it alone, we can do that, but, you know, maybe next year at the same time, they might come up and say, okay, we're gonna offer you this again, that comes back up on the agenda. there's no right or wrong way, I don't think, for this, but this would permanently take it off the agenda.
How much are we getting a month, Lisa?
Right now, it's $780.35. We have that 3% escalator. So,
That's for 20 years or 25?
5 years, I believe. So, just some rough math here at 3% and 10 years, you'd be at around $12,000 a year from $9,000 a year, so. It's just up to you guys what you wanna do.
Calculate the years, the months, and the
I
seconds.
did.
How many years is for the same payoff?
I didn't get that far. I think I had figured about 15 originally, which rough math. Because you're only, 3% is only like $25 to start with, and then it kind of bumps up to in the $30 range, you know. It has, you know, as time progresses, it's more, but it's still, the growth rate is still, I'm talking $170,000. Take a while to get there.
Is that money just currently going to the general fund?
I would make a motion to accept their offer of $170,000 and take that money and put it in a separate account for future projects.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Go ahead and call the roll.
Brad?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
I like that, Joe.
Motion carried unanimously. You know, it's kind of like trying to decide if you're gonna take social security at 62 or at 70. If you know when you're gonna die, it's easy, and if you don't, then it's kind of more up in the air. All right, thanks. Next on the agenda is to discuss and consider economic development agreement with NCDC. Last month we went into executive session. Is the offer, the response from NCDC, is that public? I mean,
Yeah, our board voted to counter it. We had been at 60, I believe, for the previous contract. Our board approved countering at $50,000 starting July 1. We've been without since March 31st. So what our board voted was $50,000 starting July 1, paying the current quarter, April to June, at the previous rate of $15,000, having this as a one-year contract, and then requesting that the mayor move on to our board to give us a good way to communicate between the city office and the NCDC, so that the NCDC can be held accountable and can, if there's any issues from the city side, in the same way that if there's any issues from the NCDC side, that can be communicated to the city and the council. So
sure.
that was what our board approved.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was public.
Yep.
Our offer was public, so I don't know that we need to go into executive session. I think we can have an open discussion, but that's up to you guys. Any
You know,
thoughts?
there's been a few years ago, it was at 75,000 from the LB 840, so going down to 50, that's a pretty big move. And you know, our goal has always been to try to regionally be able to spread out the costs of that office, and we've added on regional partners. Now that also adds to the workload, but we have brought on the city of Bassett, Rock County, Brown County has increased theirs over the last few years. They were at 1,500 when I first got on the NCDC board, and they've been at 10,000. So I mean, our other partners have contributed to take some of that burden.
Other than our LB 840 contribution, the city is still the highest contribution, right? For
12,000 from the general fund, yes. Yeah, and you know, part of our, in discussing this and our willingness to try to go to 50 for 1 year, was we did take on a big project, and there was a lot of staff time spent in the last year to 18 months on that Rock County community building with grant writing and administering, and so there was, you know, with a regional group, that project was the biggest project going in the area, so that did take quite a bit of staff time in the last year, but we've handled any applications that have come through on on the city side as well. So we have brought on a little bit additional staff with the funds we've had available. Like I said, we don't run on a very, you know, there's not a lot of slush in that budget. It's a pretty lean budget, so that's what we feel like we can offer as a counter, and I don't think our board will be interested in going anything below that.
Comments, discussion?
I liked 40. I thought it was a generous offer.
Well, Dustin, you won't hire your own person for that. By the time you're paying a salary and benefits, 40 won't touch it.
And I'm more like this, and, you know, the
I understand.
LB 840 is not a full-time job either.
Understand?
If it was a
Part of our discussion during last year when we did contract negotiations was, you know, you're not just paying for LBA 40, you're paying for all economic development. We discussed, we shared a contract that was for all economic development. You know, you guys are $2,000 higher than the other contributing partners out of general fund. So yes, you are. I'll use today as a prime example. So we've been approached to do a data center. It's a huge project. So, you know, where are those projects going? I think there's benefit to working regionally because that potential prospect did not come to Amesburg. It came to the city of Bassett. So I think those are some of the things that you need to keep in mind as well.
Does Bassett have LB 840 funds?
They do. We have a contract with them as well.
For LB 840 or to come out of their general?
They do out of both.
Both.
They pay out of their general fund just like you guys do. So they've got a
It's
pretty,
the city and not the county?
the city does, so you can't have county LBA 40, it's city.
No, but I mean, who all contributes for
Yeah,
that?
city and the county.
And then those
And-
two and LB 840.
Correct.
Well, I always supported regional thinking personally, you know. I don't like to see it separated out too much, because I've always believed if something's good for Bassett, it's good for Ainsworth. If something's good for Johnstown, it's good for Longpine. We're essentially one community up here, even though it's several small communities.
Yeah, and just for historical purposes, it hasn't been probably 5 years or so. There was zero coming into NCDC from Rock County. They were trying to go at their own. They went through about 3 economic developers that tried to handle it from the city side. They never kept anybody very long, and that's when they approached us. So yeah, that between the county and city both, they've come on. It's not been a long term. It's been within the last, well, probably 5-6 years that maybe the county came on and then the city after that, and the city actually approached us. So that's funds to our budget. Yes, there's more workload, but that's helped kind of offset what used to be a very city of Ainsworth centric budget. And you know, we talk about this in terms of LB 840. The original contract with NCDC from LB 840 was strictly just the overall budget. It had nothing to do with, it wasn't specific to LB 840. It was a way where the city was tight on its general fund dollars to be able to increase our presence with economic development, keep up with what some other communities were able to do that the city couldn't do from the general fund. And having that LB 840 as an avenue to be able to help increase our development budget to where we could be a little more competitive. You know, I think it hadn't been too long that office operated with one part-time person at around $30,000 for a full budget. So, I mean, we're now to the point, I think we're more competitive, we're responsive to applicants, to opportunities that come about, like this one I think was just today on that. So I mean, it's obviously very preliminary, but at least we're able to respond as opposed to just we get forgotten about, so.
You know, when LB 840 was voted on by the public, city of Ainsworth and stuff like that, I'm sure, you know, part of that was to bring new new housing to town, new businesses to town. I don't think, you know, I brought this up before, I don't think they just wanted to see facades and recruitment, retention, like we just got done with one, which aren't bad things, we need that. But I definitely want to see more pushing for housing. You know, when was the last time we was able to build a house? We had that big housing deal, a year ago, and we missed that. We had, I haven't seen any new businesses come to town, you know, that we've actually been able to promote. How are we gonna move forward and to do some of that stuff?
So you do have some new prospects that are coming to town. I mean, I'll tell you, I can't disclose publicly what they are today.
Right.
I mean, some of them I will, because I know one of them is public. You are getting a new bank in town. So that's a project that's been in the works for several years now. It is going to bring some additional jobs to your community, so that's exciting. It actually started out as a demo project for us. So, you know, they don't happen overnight, unfortunately. You also have another business in your community that was actually an LBA 40 funded project to start with. We're working on an expansion, and we're looking at equipment alone, it being over $1.5 million. That doesn't include their building. So, you know, there's another building project that's an expansion as well, that's in the works. But again, a lot of these businesses don't come to you and say, hey, Kristen, we're gonna build in three months. You know, this project that came in today, the timeline is less than 12 months. So it'll be a quick turnaround. We already have a meeting scheduled, so working with NPPD, we've got that meeting scheduled for 9:30 in the morning. So we are responsive, but you can't also just focus on new. I know we'd like to do that, but if you also look at the town hall meeting goals, a lot of that was recruitment and retention, not of professionals necessarily, but it was retention of our existing businesses. So you do have some businesses that are working on 5-year plans. On those, we actually help and we match those up with SCORE, or it could be NBDC. They have helped us to provide business valuations, because typically a business transition doesn't happen overnight. I know you could probably remember one that's just been here recently. That transition was probably a 5-year, 6-year project. So a lot of times those businesses that are ready to transition, they say they're ready to retire, but the harsh reality is their books aren't showing that they're ready to retire. So a lot of times you're working on a 5-year transition plan. So don't think that things aren't happening just because you don't always see it right away. How long did it take us to build the first house? It was 19 years. That was the first house that when we built that one. The previous one had been 19 years prior. So there are things happening. There's some property, and we're kind of waiting on a property owner to tell us if they will sell it. So there's things in the works. And you guys all have my cell phone number. You know,
And Brad, on the likes of new business too, this will be, I can't disclose who, but you know, that pendulum swings both ways. So we had a long-standing business here that of course collects the LBA 40 tax, and then LBA 40 helped support bringing competitors down. And that did not make the business that was collecting that tax very happy at all. It was a new business to come in and directly compete. So, I mean, that swings both ways too.
But all in all, it's still good for community, to get new businesses and get, whether it is competitive or not, it's always a good thing.
I don't disagree, I just know that there is pushback
And you'll get that for any
sometimes
business
on,
that,
yeah.
well, we struggle. I mean, number one, commercial property around here is pretty hard to find. You know, there's just not a lot that's available. I mean, you do see that there are some vacant buildings, yes, but the amount of work that's needed, I mean, we have a few that are actually demo projects, probably. You know, so don't get hung up on that either, I guess, is that some of these things are going to take time. You know, we can't just bring in a new business if we don't have workforce for them. You know, that is probably every business's concern right now, is we do not have the workforce. So if we come in and we say we're going to bring in a big project, where are they pulling 15, 20 employees from? Because they're pulling them from somebody here. The likelihood that somebody that wants to be employed can be employed in Ainsworth is very, very rare.
So with that said, you know, somebody comes in and looks at Ainsworth for a new business, and we tell them right away, we don't have the workforce. So right away, that project is gone.
Typically that doesn't happen. So when a prospect comes to you, they've already vetted your communities. So site selectors, especially when you're in a recruitment situation, they don't call us first. That is not their first lead. Typically, they have a site selection company that they have hired. So like the case that we're working with that came in today. That prospect, they've already vetted it. That is their only job, is to find a location in the state of Nebraska that fits their needs. That's it. So they've already looked, they already know our workforce situation. They probably checked KBRB to say, hey, there's a bunch of job opportunities. We're not always the first call. So, you know, that is their job. I'll use Pomida. When Pomida came in, that was a prime example of a site selector. That process is filtered, and it may happen for 6 months before we even find out they're looking. McDonald's has looked at Ainsworth in the past. So we had actually been considered as one of the first. It was going to be a trial. Now this was right before COVID hit. So of course, the market's changed. But it was going to be a smaller concept restaurant for small communities, and Ainsworth was one of our top priorities.
And with that
So-
said, you know, what are we promoting to try to get restaurants here in town? You look at Valentine, and they just, you know, they closed down 2 or 3, but how many have they just opened up in the last several months, you know?
Same family though. I need that family. If you can
Yeah.
find me that family,
Right,
we
I
can
mean,
make
what
this happen.
you know, are we out there trying to find a restaurant to, you know, owner or business to open up a restaurant in Ainsworth? That's why, to me, that's a big thing that hurts us,
I
is
actually have
we
two
don't have a
restaurants.
restaurant.
I actually have 2 restaurant projects right now that we're working on.
We've tried to assist one that purchased a building, but there's been a
So-
lot of issues with that building and utilities, and I mean, so there's
And
things we can do and there's things we can't,
And there's
try to
also
help
some
if we
things,
can.
like, some projects aren't going to qualify for LBA 40, you know.
And it's not just the LBA 40, it's, I mean, to me, it's
Development in general.
NCDC in general, whether they're using LBA 40 money or not, yeah, NCDC is there to help promote the community, whether it's Ainsworth, Bassett, you know, surrounding communities, and that's kind of why we hire you guys to promote our community and try to bring businesses to town, whether it's housing or a restaurant or manufacturing or whatever. And so that's what I want to see more out of, is stuff like that. And you guys getting on board with Ainsworth and say, hey, we want you here, we're gonna fight to get you here.
And we have done that, you know, but the other piece that I think you guys need to remember too is when we're competing with other communities have a much bigger budget for economic development. We can't offer incentives like other communities. So keep that in mind as well as you're considering cutting our budget. It makes it even more difficult. You know, we're out here rat racing, and I've got communities to the east and the west of me that are able to offer huge incentives. Right now, your LBA 40 fund doesn't even have enough money to fund 1/2 of one of my projects. So I have to take those outside of town, you know, for financing or to a local lender. So keep that in mind as well, that the more manpower you have, the more that you can do. So we've been operating, we went from a staff of 5 to a staff of 1. We're now at 1 and 2 part-times, and they're extremely part-time. We call them in on a case-by-case basis. So if we have a grant that needs assistance, today I pulled in one because I need graphics designed. Because like you said, we've got to be out here promoting. So when I get a prospect like today, I need my flyers updated, I need our website stuff updated, I need to be able to send them a flash drive that says, here's everything that you need for Ainsworth, here's everything you need for Bassett. And then we go even further and we say, second step is, now we've vetted each of these properties. This property meets your guidelines, this property does not. You know, so I'll use the data center project. So it's a huge, 5 megawatts is not a little bit, so it's 5 to 20 megawatts, okay? So knowing that, the reason we're gonna chase this, we're gonna chase it really hard, is because guess what they don't need? They don't need a lot of workforce. They need a site, they're gonna pay sales tax, they are going to kick you back on your utilities. So you guys aren't going to make it necessarily on all of your sales tax return. So it's kind of like the beauty of, this is a good project for us because I don't have to find labor. So it's great, you know, but again, I have to have staff time to be able to dedicate to that too.
You know, from the housing standpoint, Brad, that, you know, we obviously feel that's our biggest need as well, and it's something we've tried to do. We had a pretty good track record of getting houses built. That
I agree.
that didn't work anymore, and we have not found a, you know, ideally, we'd have a private contractor that would say, I wanna start building houses in the city. We wouldn't even have to be in the mix. They would come in and make an application for LBA 40. I think you guys would happily approve, but we don't have a private contractor that will do that. So we're trying to find ways around that. We had it worked out to where we had a committee that was doing that, and we can't do that anymore. So we're trying to reform as a corporation, separate from NCDC, something to get housing restarted, because we had 4 houses and a commercial project that got built about 1 a year or in that neighborhood. And now since that's gone away, we've had nothing in the last handful of years. And we want to get back to that because we do identify that's one of our biggest needs. It's why you're seeing your property tax or your property valuations going up, because people are paying insanely high prices for the little housing stock that's available when they are trying to come here, so.
Yeah, I know, that's probably.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
we're,
something
so
that's
we,
not under your guys'
it's
control,
something
or
we're
for you guys
trying to
promote.
do, but there are hurdles without having a private contractor who's willing to come in and be that applicant. There's hurdles for us now that we didn't have before when it was working, and now we have to come up with a way that it will work, cross those hurdles, because we don't have that private contractor who says, yep, I'm gonna come in and just start building houses, keep my guys busy, because they're already busy.
And we also can't serve as the general contractor when I only have one staff member. That doesn't work. I mean, in the past, that's kind of how we operated, is I actually served as the general contractor for those projects. So I can't do everything. You know, there's only so many hours in a day.
I do like the idea of Joel being on the board. I think, I know Dustin, when he was on the board, having a job and stuff like that, and you guys switching meetings off and on and stuff like that, it made it really tough for him.
Well,
to
switching
make it.
meetings was done because we couldn't get a quorum, and
Yeah.
that's part of it. So
And-
that, and I talked to Joel about that, and Joel said he's willing to be able
Yeah.
to come to our meetings unless he's fishing in Canada, of course.
But another thing on meetings though, just like us, you know, having a meeting at a certain time, if you have anybody from the public, knowing that you're meeting at this time every single month, that the people too from the public knows that's what it is, so plan on it. Then you guys don't have a quorum and you have to change it, and then.
Part of that is a lack of response from some board members.
Right.
That never responded to our emails. I've
So
wanted to
our
know-
meetings are set for the.
I'm not trying to tell you how to do your
No,
job at all.
I- No, so Brad, we used to have meetings on the same Wednesday as the city council, so that if there were things that were gonna be on the council agenda that needed our board's response, we could do that ahead of time. That didn't work very well with Lisa trying to prepare for a council meeting as well that day, so we moved them to the third Wednesday at 11:30. They've been that way ever since. The only time they get moved, on a rare occasion, we have a weather issue. We have people coming from Bassett, from Springview that are on our board. Bad weather, they're not making it. And quite frankly, we've had to cancel some because we get 3 or 4 board members that'll commit to being in a meeting. Now, I tried to address that a couple months ago. I sent a fairly strongly worded email encouraging attendance at our board meetings for that exact reason, so that we had consistency, because of the few board members we did have coming every meeting. They were changing their plans, and when we had to change a meeting date because we couldn't get a quorum, then that messed up their plans, and they couldn't make it then next. So we've had quorum the last few meetings. That I don't anticipate that being a further issue. But I appreciate Joel sitting down with us and being willing to potentially make it work. And I get it, it's tough for all those people that have jobs
It
to
is.
make a meeting in the middle of the day.
Especially when they work out of town
Yep.
and stuff like
For
that,
sure.
live out of town.
For sure, and then, yeah,
and
there's
weather and
several
stuff,
that have that, but evening meetings are worse for those same people. Evening meetings never worked.
And we've tried to alleviate that too. I mean, and maybe we've called quorum too soon. You know, if I don't have responses, or Emily hasn't received responses from several of the board members, and they're ones that typically don't attend, we don't count them, because I'm not going to make someone who's volunteering from Springview or Bassett drive over here for fun. I mean, that's not fair to them either, so.
Of course, I'm sure like you guys' meetings, it's better to have a open meeting with the people there versus email meetings,
Yeah.
because open discussion works so much better than email discussions.
Yep,
Just
and
so-
we
so
very
much more
rarely do anything electronically, very rarely.
Well, you've had a chance to kick some things around, a little good interchange there. Anybody reach a point that they're willing to take any action, propose any action?
I don't know, I'm not gonna say much, I've been disappointed for several years, to be quite honest. How much is Bassett paying in their LB 840 funds?
Their contract's currently at 15,000.
You know, I had several things on my list last year about some houses being gone, funds that were raised that we ended up turning back. Appreciate the applications, but again, you know, and I know you can't control, but, I mean, I get I've got complaints from business owners.
And we've gotten complaints on the other side as well.
And so, I'm willing to do this another year, but I don't think we're getting good input. I'll leave it at that. I'm glad the mayor can be on and vet some things back towards us. And if there's anything we're doing that's on our side that's not right, we'll go up to that as well.
So Bassett gives 15,000, we give 72,000.
That's 15 out of their LD 40 fund.
Right, but like total, that community over there gives 15,000.
Yeah.
And
They're
we-
Five,
very
and
happy
5,000 from their general fund, so
we give-
20
And Ainsworth gives 72,500.
they did last year, yeah. And before that, it was 87.
So if we, so like white, was there like something coming down the pipe of like equal contributing?
So most economic development is done on essentially a per capita basis. If you look at development districts, it is typically per capita. I mean, that's what you guys pay for CNET. Is that correct?
It's based on population.
Yeah. So, there's different models, but our current bylaws, which is why we need our board members to attend regularly, is that if we need to change and restructure, our board is not opposed to that. But as of right now, every year, I mean, I know Ken just said, you've been disappointed for a couple of years, but over the last couple of years, what have you guys done? Every year, you cut our budget. So, again, we can only do so much, and if you think you can do better, go elsewhere.
Well, I move that we accept the proposed counteroffer for, let me get this right, was it 40,000 out of the LB 40, or 50?
It was the NCDC's counter.
Yep. With the mayor and Lisa serving as two of our seats.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Go ahead and call the roll.
Kent,
Yes.
Justin,
No.
Heather,
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1. We'll move onward and upward.
Next meeting, Wednesday, 11:30. See you there.
Might have a fishing trip.
And Greg, I can
Somebody from the city
for
will be there.
holding our board members.
That's all we can do.
Yeah, they need that.
I'm on one of
It's
two
not
or
good
now
for you
with
or us or anybody. We
Joel.
need to-
Joel will be considered an at-large member, but there's only 3 at-large members, myself, Kim Buckley, and it will now be Joel. The others are basically contributing partners that have a seat. And I think the attendance the last couple of meetings has been excellent, so I'm hopeful that continues. And I promise, we are trying to work on housing issues. It's at the forefront of every meeting, and it's just gonna unfortunately take a private corporation with volunteers, basically,
Tomorrow morning.
that are willing to start this. We have a meeting at 10 tomorrow morning, to try to move forward and get that knocked out. So we're trying to cross those hurdles and get enough people that have that same goal to do it on our own.
Okay, thanks everybody that was constructive discussion. Sometimes it's hard to talk about some of these things, but good job. Moving on to the regular agenda. I'm sorry, Michael, I'm gonna skip ahead one item here. It won't take but a minute.
That's fine.
We're gonna go ahead and discuss and consider special designated liquor license application for the Elks Lodge number 1790 for the Ainsworth Booster Club fundraiser at the Ainsworth Conference Center on August 15th, 2025 from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m., August 16th, 2025. I mean, how many years have we done this now?
This is the
Several.
fourth year, this will be the fourth year here, right?
Fourth year for that?
They've been doing it for a lot of years, but I
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think this is only the second.
I'm not aware of any issues. If you guys are, I think this is, I believe it's fairly straightforward.
I'll make a motion to approve the designated special designated liquor license application for the Elks Club 1790 for the Ainsworth Booster Club fundraiser at the Ainsworth Conference Center on August 15, 2025, from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. August 16th, 2025. That should be August 16th and 17th, 2025.
No, it's the 15th
Oh.
and 16th.
You got it right.
You got it right.
Okay, good, all right. Never mind.
It's a mouthful. I
It is.
understand. Got a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Anyone call roll?
Dustin,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Kent.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously, and now we've got Michael Ho back here from AMGL. He's gonna give us a little fiscal year-end audit report.
Thank you, guys. So I'm gonna start my presentation with the bound out report that you guys all have in front of you. Not gonna go through all of it, just hit some of the highlights. If you have any questions, just go ahead and ask them. So on page 3 of that report is the independent audit report. It's the bound one. So we had an unmodified opinion. I mean, everything was presented fairly, no material statements, the type of opinion that we want to have each year. You guys did have a single audit this year because we spent enough federal funds to do the project. We had no findings on that. It was a clean single audit. Jumping to page 12, kind of in the middle there, we have a list of some of the major capital asset events for the year. Didn't do a lot, but we did spend quite a bit on some of the big project. We spent about $2.1 million on the Main Street rehab. I had a couple other smaller ones in there, but that was by far the biggest one. On top of page 13, we have a table for the city's outstanding debt. As September 30th, 24, we had $2,740,000 of debt compared to $1,820,000 the year before. So our debt increased $120,000, or about 50%, just due to that Main Street project. I'm going to jump back to page 16. This is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. These are presented on the modified cash basis, so we don't have receivables, capital assets, and liabilities. It's basically just going to be your cash. The general fund had about 1.3 million of cash. Of that, we had 661,000 that was assigned for park and pool improvements, 251,000 assigned for budget stabilization, because we had adopted a budget for 9/30/25 that was going to spend down the general fund cash reserve. So we had 358,000 cash that was unassigned that we could spend at our discretion. Street fund had 517,000 cash, all restricted for street projects. OB 840 fund had 415,000 of cash restricted for economic development. The debt service fund had 699,000 of cash restricted for debt service. And then those other governmental funds are going to be the non-major, which includes the community improvement fund, housing development, and then the ARPA. They had total assets of 511,000. Of that, we had 215,000 restricted for community improvements and 295,000 restricted for federal programs. Page 18 is the revenue expenses for the governmental funds. The third line from the bottom shows the change in fund balances based on the net income or loss for the year. The general fund increased 207,000. Street fund increased 149,000. OB 840 increased 251,000. Debt service increased 183,000, and then the other funds decreased 160,000. That big decrease is due to the 150,000 of ARPA funds that we transferred out to use for the Main Street project. Page 20 is the balance sheet for the utility fund. We're on the accrual basis, so we do show all the receivables, capital assets, all the liabilities reported here. Water fund had total assets of about 2.8 million. Of that, 849,000 was cash. About 494,000 of total liabilities, so your total net position or equity was just under 2.3 million. Sewer fund had 5 million in total assets, 448,000 of that was cash. Just about 1.9 million of liabilities, so 3.1 million of net position. And then the garbage fund had 735,000 of total assets, about 398,000 of cash. 368,000 of liabilities, we had 366,000 of equity or net position. Page 21 is the revenue expenses for the utility fund. Third line from the bottom shows the increase or decrease. The water fund increased 272,000. Part of that is gonna be 192,000 of grant income that's gonna be CDBG money or loan forgiveness that we've got. So we have the loans or the grants show up as revenue, but the expenses don't reflect in here because they're capitalized, we just have the depreciation. So we kind of have a big increase this year just from the way that's reported. Sewer fund increased 267,000. We did lose 72,000 from operations, that's just due to depreciation of 135,000. Then the garbage fund increased 11,000. Page 22 is the statement of cash flows. It's about 2/3 of the way down on the page, it's indented, shows the increase and decrease in your cash. So the water fund cash reserves increased 161,000, sewer fund decreased $6,700, and the garbage fund decreased 38,000. I'm not going to go over it in any detail, just wanted to point out that it is in there if you haven't seen it. Back on page 55 and 56, we do have the detail for the non-major governmental funds, the community improvement, housing development, the ARPA funds. And then the page behind that, on page 57, is the general fund department details. We have the revenue and expenses for each department. Any questions on any of that so far?
Now, those ARPA funds are the ones that we are trying to get rid of, right?
Those were the federal, like, COVID,
That's basically the COVID
Okay, that's
money.
the wrong one. I was thinking of the one that was different.
you're
Yeah.
talking about the housing,
Right.
housing rehab.
The rehab funds, yeah.
Any other questions on the actual audit report? So in addition to the audit report, there was a couple letters to management. I don't know if you guys have those in front of you. Okay. So there's a 2-page letter, it says we don't have segregation of duties, we're never gonna get rid of that comment, it's just not feasible for a city your size to have enough accounting staff to not handle transactions from beginning to end by one person. We do probably 80 to 85 audits for cities across the state, and everyone has that comment, it's just, City of Hastings might not, they would be the only one of our audit clients that doesn't have it, they're obviously quite a bit bigger than you. But any city that's gonna be similar to you is gonna have that same comment. So you guys as a council, mayor, just need to continue being involved in financial oversight. And I think we've done a good job of that. We'll go through the budget process, we've always done a good job of that, so just continue to keep up on that. There's also a 4-page letter. And on the 3rd page of that, where we're listing of our audit findings or issues. So we have 4 comments here. First one is I always recommend monitoring the utility rates for possible rate increases. Not necessarily saying we need to increase the rates, but always be watching those. When you get behind on utility rates, it's awfully hard to get caught up on those. So always be watching those, raise them as the rates as we need to keep up with inflation. And I pretty much do that in all of my audits, just as a good reminder. Number 2, there were 7 checks in the water service deposit account that have been outstanding for more than a year. We just want to recommend following up on those, make sure that if we need to find the correct person and get them to them, if we need to void them, do that. But anything over a year, we should be following it up on. Number 3 is kind of along the same lines. There's several deposits in the city checking account. And those are probably just made, or duplicate deposits made in error, we just need to clean those up. And then number 4, interest on the CDs wasn't recorded during the year, that should get recorded. I know this year is kind of a weird year, we were moving along some money, they just didn't get recorded. So we had 4 comments, they're all, one is just kind of a suggestion, the other 3 are just pretty minor. The audit, really smooth, Lisa does a good job, staff is all great to work with, it's a pretty clean audit for us to do. Last thing I'm gonna go over is this little 2-page benchmarking that I handed out prior to the meeting. I think most of you have seen this before, a year ago. But, so our firm does 80 to 85 audits per cities, villages across the state. We're by far the largest municipal auditor in the state. I think the next one's probably down around 45 to 50 audits that they do. So what we do with all of our experience and all the data that we have is we basically split them up into different population groups and compare you to cities your size. So you're going to be in the 1,000 to 3,000 peer group. The average population for that group is 1,563. Your population is 1,616, so we're right at the average for the group this size. The average valuation for communities in that group is just under 116 million. We're at 100 million. On a per capita basis or per person in town, the average is 74,000, we're at 62.
Just wait till next year.
I think from what I've heard is, we might catch up. I think everyone else is gonna go up, but maybe not the percentages that I heard before the meeting tonight,
Yeah,
so,
a lot of houses around town could be 30-40%, so.
yeah, it's
we
a,
could-
it's a big increase.
Yeah,
So number one, the unrestricted net position versus total net position basically tells us how much of the city's resources are available for the normal day-to-day operations and programs. So for the government-wide or the city as a whole, we recommend 35%. For 24, you guys were at 20%, down from 21% a year ago. So we're a little bit low on this. I mean, it's just due to the fact that our utility funds, we do have a lot of debt, so that pushes our net position down, and then our general fund does have low cash reserves. So that's kind of why we're on the low side there. Really, the only way to get that up is we pay off that debt, and then work on trying to build some cash reserves in that general fund. The government activities are basically the general street, the tax supported funds, we recommend 25%. This year, we're at 17.8%, up from 16.5. Again, that's just due to the fact that the general fund has low cash reserves. And then for the business type activities or the utility funds, we recommend 40%. We're at 22.1 this year, down from 27% a year ago. And that's just due to the fact that we took on so much debt for that project. Number two, the top four sources of revenue in the governmental activities. Your biggest revenue stream is going to be the sales tax. So the typical city your size gets $306 of sales tax per capita. We're at 426, up from 407. So we do have really good sales tax revenue in the community.
What was the, or is it 426, what's the other one per capita?
The average is
Yeah.
306.
306.
The property tax revenue, the average is $299 per capita. We're at $342. Part of that is going to be the fact that our general levy is a little bit higher, but we also have that special, that 10-cent levy that we put in. So that's included in this calculation. The state allocation, the average is $221 per capita. We're at $371 this year. That's kind of misleading because the audit was filed late the year before, so we had the highway allocation was withheld. So we ended up with 16 months of highway allocation, so that's why we're high on that. And we'll show that here a little bit. And then the franchise fees, the average is $80 per capita. We're at $185, down from $192 a year ago. So number three looks at the detail for the state allocation. So the highway allocation that we just talked about, the average is $160 per capita. This year we're at $228 just because we had those additional 4 months. When I back out those 4 months, we were at $170 per capita, so we're right in line with the, or a little bit above average on our street funding. And that's why a year ago we were at 106 because we basically had only 8 months that year. The equalization is state aid based on a formula using your population valuation and tax levy to kind of equalize property taxes. So because our valuation has been a little bit lower, we've qualified for some more equalization. So the average city gets $61 per capita. We were at 77 this year, up from $63 a year ago. Number four looks at the governmental spending. So this excludes capital outlay and debt, which is going to be operating expenses. The admin, the average city your size spends $160 per capita. We're at $241 this year, $271 a year ago. I think part of that is just the way we allocate some of the expenses. We have a lot of the salaries and wages go into the general instead of getting split between the different departments. That's kind of why we're high on the admin costs there.
Did that was a recommendation last year,
We
You
didn't
guys-
implement that in the budget this year, we talked about it.
I know we talked about it in
Splitting
budget time,
administrative
was going through that, because it would have all been talked about last summer, so we wouldn't have had time to really change anything for this fiscal year anyways. But did we talked about it, did that get changed?
I think we decided we were going to do it this budget season.
This next, okay. Police, the average is $140 per capita. This year we were down to 127. We were $170 a year ago when we changed the contract. When we look at 25, we should be quite a bit lower even yet, just because the contract ended during this last year. Fire and ambulance, the average is 25, we were at 16. Park, the average is 60, we were at 107, up from 97 a year ago. Pool, the average is 40, we were at 44. Library, the average is 65, we were at 84, basically the same as the year before. In the cemetery, the average is 25, and we were at 33. So I heard the comment that we're above average on a lot of these categories. We do have a lot of some good revenue between the sales tax and the equalization, the franchise fees that would kind of allow us to spend a little bit more on some of these departments. So number 5, the outstanding geo debt versus valuation. So any debt that would be serviced by property taxes. Basically tells us that the city has too much debt to actually service. So anything with the 3% is going to be excellent. We're at 0.44 this year, but from 0.13 a year ago. That's just because we took on some more debt with that project. Number 6, the unassigned fund balance compared to general fund expenditures. It basically tells us how much of the general fund resources are available for some normal day-to-day operations and programs. You recommend 30%, you're right on that at 30.5 this year, all the way up from 4% a year ago. Number 7, you recommend having 12 months of street expense reserve for in that street fund. This year we're at 16.3 from 9.3 a year ago, so we do have good street cash reserves. Number 8 looks at the property tax levies. So the typical city your size has a 40-cent general levy plus an 11-cent debt service levy, so a total of 51 cents. You guys have a 45-cent general levy, that 10-cent special levy that we put in, so we have a total levy of 55 cents. So our levy is about 4 cents higher than most cities our size throughout the state. Number 9, the net depreciable capital assets compared to original cost basically tells us how old the equipment and infrastructure is. So the lower these percentages get, the more important it is that we have cash reserve to maintain those assets and then potentially replace those. We recommend staying over 35%. For the government activities, we were at 45% this year, and then the business sector at 48%. So we will have some cash reserves recommended for equipment replacement based on that. Number 10 looks at the utility rates. When we compare the net operating income versus the total operating revenue, we recommend a 15% return on those charges to generate cash for operations, equipment replacement, debt service. This year, your water fund was at 4.4%, up from 3.2% a year ago. Sewer fund was a negative 17%. A year ago, we were negative 2%. And that trash fund was just under 7%. Last year, it was about 9%. So across the board, we are lower. The sewer fund, I think, had some big repair. In addition to the project, we had a bunch of repairs in that sewer fund this year. But again, that's where we need to just keep an eye on those rates and make sure that we don't start losing cash from operations. Because we do have good cash reserves in those funds. We also have a lot of debt that we're going to need to service out of there. So just want to make sure that we are able to maintain our cash reserves and service that debt and then have cash for operations. So just keep an eye on those. Number 11, the debt coverage ratio. Basically tells us if our rates are set high enough to actually service that debt. So we want to see at least 1.5. Across the board, from the water, sewer, and trash, we are right above that 1.5. So based on that, it looks like our rates are set to service that debt. I know we still have probably some more debt we're going to take on this year for this project. So there's just something we want to keep an eye on is on those utility rates. Last one, number 12, looks at the cash reserves for the general and utility fund. So the top one for the general, we recommend $575,000 of cash plus $350,000 for equipment replacement, so a total of $925,000. This year we have $358,000 of cash that was basically unassigned that we hadn't already obligated to spend somewhere else. So when you throw out the equipment replacement of $350,000 that we calculate, the important one would be the operating $575,000. So we are about $225,000 but short on general fund cash reserves. We had a heck of an improvement from 23. We were at 52,000, so we've seen a lot of improvement. But again, we need to work on trying to build up some of those general fund cash reserves. Then the business type activities are the utility funds. We recommend $385,000 for operations, $165,000 for restricted. 185,000 for equipment replacements, so a total of 735,000. We're just under 1.7 million. Pretty good increase from a year ago. We were just under 1.5 million. So that's it. We do have really good reserves in those in the cash reserves in those utility funds. Just want to make sure that we don't start using those up just through operations. Those cash reserves we've built for debt service, equipment replacement. So we just want to keep an eye on those rates and make sure that we can actually maintain positive cash flow in those. Across the board, the audit was good. You are in pretty good shape when you look at those free cash utility funds are in good shape. That general fund, we saw a lot of improvement in those cash reserves this year, and we'll work on that going through this next budget cycle. As far as trying to build that up, the board would recommend it. It looks like we're on the right track on a lot of that.
It's like we're a little high on some, a little low on others, so on the average, not too bad.
Yeah, Michael, can I ask you a question on the sales tax per capita? I mean, from 306 average for cities our size to 426 average, I mean, is that probably on pretty much the higher end of that entire grouping? I mean, there may be some touristy places that might do a little better than that. I mean, Valentine probably.
Yeah,
has a
Valentine's
little
gonna blow
better
you out
pull
of the
factor.
water.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
right.
No, you're definitely on the higher end of that range.
That's kind of what it's saying, you know, because we look at that as a pull factor, and, you know, going back to some of those things on the development side, we do pull people from outside the area here to shop and to spend money. So, yeah, like I said, tourist locations like Valentine or Ogallala with McConaughey or some of those would be outliers just because they have that river and golf course traffic. But I mean, for a town our size, that's a big difference with
Yeah,
306 average to 426 per capita on.
A lot of that's just the location, because there's now a lot of
Yeah.
big communities around you, so you are pulling from the rural areas, because I mean, this is where they're gonna go for that stuff. So,
And we're catching a lot of that traffic. Well, anything going to Valentine's, we're getting a lot of that coming and
You
going.
guys, just that airport all the time too, oh my goodness. The money that flies overhead in some of those jets every day.
I thought they were fixing this and all that.
You tapped into that market.
They're adding their own.
Kim Bain for it.
any other questions?
I'll have lots of questions in the budget.
Okay. No, and when I came up with the budget, that's what I want. I want discussion, I want questions in, so that'd be good.
You guys are looking at doing that then in this budget, implementing the administrative, spreading the administrative costs over the utility funds as opposed
Try
to
to put them
just
in the right position.
burying that all in the general.
Percentage in the right position.
Because it always just seems like your general fund gets squeezed tight where you know, if you want to do a park project or if you want to do something along those lines, it's tough to.
Just need to figure out, we have the girls figure out how much time they put into each one and try to estimate that. And this is kind of tough.
Do you guys have a recommendation for that on what you see most cities do when they do divvy that up? Is it?
Yeah, not off the top of my head, but before we do the budget, I mean, we could have.
You'll have
We could have
recommendations.
some, yeah.
That's gonna be, I don't know, like, we kinda looked at, touched on it last year a little bit on it. That's gonna be coming on my push this year, so like, I really think we should really look hard into moving that. Distributing it, so it kind of pays for itself a little bit, instead of just hammering the general fund, which is really tight.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever that process is, you know.
Now, was it sewer, are we really tight there? Is that part of it? What was that, page 55?
Sewer was rough this year, I think,
Because
of
we
the
had the-
project.
Down the hill there, we did have that, you know, down that hill.
Yeah, we had 70,000 repairs in the sewer fund this
Okay,
year.
So, yeah.
so it wasn't anything like that.
Plus we had some equipment issues, some unexpected things.
That way we can do a Bradley Street project.
Yeah, address that a little. We have capability to take on much more debt?
The ability to take on much more debt.
If we do street projects, what's that gonna look
We're
like?
really hurting on some of our streets. As all
We'll have to do
communities
it,
are.
if we do a paving district, that'll help out, but it's still gonna, some of it's gonna fall back on us,
Yeah, quite a
of
bit.
course.
Yeah, so like right now, the street does have good cash reserves.
What page, John?
But you're saying that's about right where it needs to be?
Yeah, it's
Not
pretty much
trying
right
to-
where it needs to be. We spent. This year, it's a little hard to tell just because we had that Main Street project going on this year, so a lot of that went to the streets. But when we look at the revenue that goes into the, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell from this year, just because the street fund is just goofy this year, because like I said, we had 16 months of the highway allocation when we have the project going on.
That's definitely, we're gonna probably need some help with trying to figure that out on our budget. is-
Yeah, and as we go through the
We need to
budget,
get that.
Plan on that.
Get some plan on. So,
Yeah.
if you need to make a note or whatever like that, we're gonna have to do a couple street projects, you call it, never get that word, district or whatever. Maybe paving district, there you go.
You know, with our sales tax revenue, a portion of that 1 cent sales tax goes toward debt service. Do we have any, do we know ballpark in the last year or so what that portion for debt service brings in?
Feel like 200.
Couple $100,000?
yeah, so for this last year, it was 246,000.
Is what it brought in for the debt service, and does that just get spread out over all of our different debt, or how does that get then allocated to pay off? I mean, do we make bond payments out of that then, instead of them having to come from the sewer or the water department or whatever?
We pay those debt payments, or how we've been doing it, we pay it out of the applicable department. So if it's a sewer payment or a water payment, it comes out of that fund, but then it gets reimbursed by debt service.
By the debt service, okay. So that does basically help take some of the,
And we have quite a bit coming out of debt service for our utilities now, actually. And so that's maybe partially why the utility balances are high, because we're actually not making those payments.
Wish I could do that.
well, that's not, I mean, that's nice to have that debt service
Those are
in the
things
sales
that
tax so
could
that
be-
it doesn't jack up your water and
Could be
sewer
moved,
rates.
I guess, if you didn't want to reimburse the fund out of debt service, you didn't have to.
Well, but I mean, that's what it's, you have to, it can only be used for that, and you've paid off this building. That, the previous sewer project before the Main Street one, is that still,
paid off.
are we still paying that off, or is that one done? Because that was our
Lined
last
everything?
big project.
Yeah.
Where you lined all those.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
thought we paid
Is
that
that
one.
one paid off?
No, it's a 40-year loan,
It was a what?
a 40-year loan.
So not paid off.
No, that's the USDA ones, that's, yeah, we owe 1.2 million on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we owe a lot pretty much all of our debt is in sewer debt.
Yeah, the paving, the previous paving
That's for
district
sure.
stuff.
We still have a paving bond.
For over here, for the north
It's a
bank.
short-term bond. I think it's a 10-year note.
Okay.
Any other questions for Michael? Appreciate the
Yeah, thank
summary.
you very much.
Feel like we get a lot of good information.
I appreciate that.
This is always good,
Yeah,
kind of know where we are.
compared to other communities and stuff on the average and stuff, where we need to be, and that's something to focus on.
See you in August.
See you in August.
Yeah.
All right.
It'll be right before you know it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and consider a wheelchair lift for the Ainsworth swimming pool. I think Julie Meisner's here, and
I am here. So, most of you know me, I'm Julie Meisner. I am married to Kyle, and we have our son Colbert. He was born with a rare form of muscular dystrophy, which is chronic and progressive and degenerative. And over the last 2 to 3 years, it has really affected his muscles to the point where he's almost wheelchair bound. He can walk very short distances. The reason why I come to you today is because the agenda says a wheelchair lift, but that's substantially different than what we actually need, which is a pool chair lift to be potentially installed over at the pool. Right now, to get into the pool, he has a caregiver that is doing fantastic with him. And they've finagled a system where they can get in and out, but probably in the next 2 to 4 years, Coulter's not gonna be able to walk. He's not gonna be able to get out of the pool on his own. I've talked to Katie about this year, having the pool staff help us get him in and out of the pool. That's very generous that they would help us do that. However, it's not ideal because these are city employees and I would hate for them to be helping me with something with Coulter and then for them to get injured. So not only for Coulter, I mean, this directly will benefit my family, but my hope is that if we can install a pool lift that other people in our community, I feel like maybe there could be some other people in our community that would like to access the pool, but can't because they too have mobility issues. I mean, this affects Coulter's activities of daily living. The pool is his life. Like, this is most important to him in the summertime. So I know that it's gonna be expensive. And I've talked to some people around town about, like, I don't know anything about the ABC committee or the Brown County Community Foundation, but the people that I did talk to told me that those would be good places for me to go to request grant funding for this. I don't know, I've never done anything like this before, so I'm coming to the city because it's the city pool, and I just am requesting that the city help me navigate how to get this accomplished. So, I don't know.
So
if
did
there's
I
any-
understand right, you say this year, you think it's still doable this year, so we would be looking at, that gives
So-
us time to get ready for next year?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think, with the help of the city staff, I think they are making it this year. But I just foresee in the next 2 to 4 years that eventually he's not gonna be, even multiple people aren't gonna be able to get him out. I mean, he's almost like 140 pounds right now. So eventually he's gonna be our size, and, you know, Coulter's development, he's probably between 3 and 4 years of age, but chronologically he's 13. So, the pool is going to be something that we're gonna be doing forever.
I think you're right, not just for Coulter's benefit, but I think if we had something like that, it would benefit other people in the future other than just one person, so, I think it's probably something we should probably help you try to achieve this project, if there's any way we can. I guess I'm kind of glad to hear that we are able to really have some time to sit down and figure this out and try to find some funding. So when the pool opens next year, hopefully it's there.
I would love that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that would be, I felt like coming to the city council and being, I didn't think about this until like, I don't know when I came, like May, maybe even the first part of June, but I know that this year the expectation to get it done would be like non-existent.
I'd hate to rush it and not get the right one.
Well, they're like $5,000, like the ones that I've looked into, and plus, I mean, and I also would not be opposed if the city was like, well, we don't wanna do a electric pool chair lift. Even if we could install a manual one, which is just like, okay, and I'm not a construction lady, but I'm just like drill it into the ground and there it is, right? But an electric pool chair lift, you have to do the concrete work, you have to do the electrical, you have to, I mean, there's tons more involved. But as far as the manual chair lift, the ones that I have seen are like hydraulic lifts. It would take longer.
It is.
But it still would accomplish the task.
Your portable ones must be some battery.
And
Right.
portable ones are even, they're like 10 per.
They're more expensive, the portable ones.
Isn't
Yeah.
that kind of what you prefer? Or is it
I
kind
would prefer it like at the pool that we could wheel it in and out as needed, but I'm okay with in-ground too.
I think, I think it's something we need to do, I don't care how, or whatever.
And if we, if we get the funding and stuff like that, would, and figure out what would be the easiest for our pool operators to be able to operate and make sure that the liability insurance and stuff like that, and how all that plays out as far as, do our staff have to have training to do this without, we need to look at the liability, but I definitely think it's something we should try to have in place by the time the pool opens next year.
Yeah. Is there, funding, I think you should go with personally, the portable one, something that's gonna be convenient, somebody can get out of the way once.
Right.
You have kids that are running around there, kind of liability running into it, I guess.
Goofing around.
Goofing around, I don't wanna mess around with it, if you, put them in the pool, then put it away, something that's convenient for everybody. I think we should really dive hard, I don't know what we gotta do.
We gotta look at the money,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we don't have to look at the money. I mean, the money shouldn't be the determining factor on which one we get, but,
So how does it work, when you were talking to me about the EDC committee and the brown, do I need to, is that a personal thing that I need to do, or is that the city applies for
The city
those?
have to apply for it.
The city can apply for ABC funds, and I think probably in this regard, if the city council is on board with moving forward, I could make that application to the ABC, and it might be nice if you attended the meeting with me, just to kind of talk to the committee, but it's a one-page application, and they meet typically the first Wednesday of the month if they have an application, so. Potentially, if we worked on it, we could have an application in July for them to consider, and then it would come to the city council ultimately to approve their recommendation for funding.
And for the foundation, I'm on that, and you've got all kinds of time, because we take applications clear till the end of next March, and then award grants. Well, we decide which ones we're going to fund like in April, May, and the funding comes out in the middle of summer, so we just kind of come through that process. You got plenty of time if you want to do it, there's no rush, but it's not gonna happen any before that, yeah. That's a
Culture's
big.
teaching me a lot of things in these last 13 years, but a chair lift at the pool is not something that I thought, that we would ever have to come to the city council about. There's lots of things that I didn't know we were gonna have to come to do things for or about, but I would like to see it happen, and however I can help with the process to get that accomplished.
Katie, I think when it comes to picking out one, you really need to be, unless you're not gonna do the pool next time. You
Say
need to
that.
be, you need to be point on it,
Right.
because you're gonna have to, Brad's right, liability is a huge risk, especially somebody else screwing around with it. But you might have to have recurrency training for your staff, or only one or two of them can do it, or how many people are there, so.
And I'll check into the training, I haven't got that far.
And we need to check with our
yeah.
insurance too, to
Right.
see what's required, but something that, don't let people that aren't running the pool pick a
Right.
lift, it's like, oh my gosh, this is the worst model we could have possibly got.
Right,
So,
And make sure you
you need to have your.
start with
input.
your ideal model.
right. And I'll maybe try to reach out to some other public pools and see if they have some what they would recommend too, so.
But I know Lisa had mentioned, with our pool, probably portable for your, and also, we don't know where everything runs under that deck.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we start boring holes in it,
I mean,
everybody's out of
I
the
know
pool
the
pretty soon.
water.
Yeah.
One more leak and we're done.
You will call with a C or K?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
How does that impact your license with the HHS? Because wouldn't that have to, is that considered an addition?
I talked to our pool inspector, and actually the wheelchair, or not, it's not a wheelchair, it is just a lift. But it doesn't affect it at all, yeah, we don't need their approval or anything like that, we don't need the state's approval to add
I
one.
know.
Does the pool
Don't need
fit
anybody looking
under,
around the pool.
like a grandfathered law that
We
it
did
didn't have to
actually,
be installed because of how old it is or whatever?
we did look at that, just to make sure kind of what the basis of discussion was, but I don't know that that's a factor here.
Oh, okay.
I think,
I just was wondering, I didn't know if,
I think what we determined was there's really no clause on swimming pools for like a grandfather on ADA like that. So
Right.
if someone's requesting it.
well, I appreciate your support, and Coulter will definitely enjoy being able to get in and out for, I mean, we don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon, moving or doing anything, and like I said, the pool is Coulter's life, so, and it's something that you'll be seeing us there.
Might be like the fishing pond, once it's there.
So I guess the question is,
Right.
would you like me to make an ABC application or what?
Yeah, we need to know what, you don't know what model.
Well, Katie and I and.
Okay.
Yeah, I think everybody's in support of it. I don't know if we need
Yeah,
a
probably
motion
don't,
or
yeah.
anything, or if just
You have to-
roll with it.
You have to have a motion
No, since we're doing it in the name of the city, it's helpful to know the council's agreement, but that's.
I'll make a motion to have Lisa pursue applications for a pool chair lift for the Ainsworth swimming pool.
A second.
Motion and second, any other discussion?
So before we go forward, I mean, you got an idea, you gotta have some idea what you're going after, I mean.
Yeah,
For dollar wise and style.
yeah.
We have a couple that we've looked at.
All right.
It'll all be part of whatever application we make is, so it would be off of what Katie thinks is most appropriate.
And your shirt too. Seriously. Before you buy it.
Any other discussion? Go ahead and call the roll.
Heather?
Yes.
Brad?
Yep.
Kent?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. Thanks for coming in, and we'll keep moving forward.
And I'll let you know, Julie or Katie, one of us will be in touch with you.
Okay.
When we get put together, I guess.
Okay, next on the agenda, we've got a few LB 840 loan committee recommendations to consider. First is number 25-02, a facade application in the amount of $10,000.
Just need a motion? Or do you want to discuss?
Up to you guys.
I move that we approve LB 840 facade application in the amount of $10,000, number 25-02.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Call roll.
Brad?
Yes.
Kent?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. Next is, believe it or not, number 2503. A business loan in the amount of $23,853.17 at a rate of 4%, amortized over 5 years. Hopefully you have a chance to look at these.
Anybody else want to turn?
You're good, so good, kid.
Just do it, Ken.
I move that we approve LB 840, number 25-03, which was a business loan amount of $23,853.17 at a rate of 4%, amortized over 5 years.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Call roll.
Kent?
Yes.
Dustin?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously. You can all guess that the next one is number 25-04, facade application in the amount of $3,400 and to waive the $100 application fee due to the nonprofit status of the applicant.
I'll make a motion to approve LB 840 loan number 25-04 facade application in the amount of $3,400 and to waive the $100 application fee due to the nonprofit status of the applicant.
I'll second.
Motion and a second, any other discussion? Call roll.
Dustin?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Kent?
Yes.
You know, facades aren't always necessarily the greatest, but you look at it, they do help improve the property tax base, so you do then get some some money coming back, you know, it improves the values of those buildings. A lot of the projects, if they're windows or, you know, things that are structural that help. So, I mean, yeah, obviously we don't like to see it used for more impactful things, but it does help. I mean, it does bring some back. It certainly makes your downtown area look
Makes
better.
Main Street look nicer,
It does,
considering the
'cause-
lack of trees.
And I'll give you an example. When I go to other communities to cover games, I always try to make it a point, if I get there early enough, to take a cruise just kind of down their business districts and their, you know, their commercial corridors. And to be honest, for a community our size, our commercial district looks way better than some of them of similar size that have vacant and boarded up buildings and broken windows that have a board, you know. So there's a lot of communities our size that really struggle with buildings in their main corridors that if you look down ours, you can maybe pick out one or two, but there's not a high percentage. But I always do that every time I go somewhere for a game, and some of them it's pretty rough.
What do we have in our LB, or our ABC?
And the treasurer report.
And kind of what comes in the last couple of months?
So ABC doesn't garner near as much as LB 40 in debt service per month, but last month I got $6,000, which is pretty normal.
That's what-
Five
okay.
to 6,000 a month. And they have 220,000 cash, but I know they have some projects earmarked.
Okay.
That haven't been drawn yet.
Net 220, is that after the park, that's taken out already, the stuff that was approved for park?
We've paid some of it.
Paid some of it, not all of it, gotcha.
All right, we've covered the entire agenda with the exception of the most important thing, Lisa's report.
It was in the sheriff's report. I don't know if it really it was just in the sheriff's report.
Probably the most important thing we've done is we hired Mike Quinn to be our new garbage truck driver. Yay. It's mine. Stan Daniels, our current driver, is gonna move over into Bonnie Goshman's position in the street department, so.
Is he gonna do it for 44 years?
I don't know. Yeah, so, I think Mike will be a great addition. He started last week and Stan's working with him, training him up before he officially moves over, so. If you see Mike, tell him welcome. Pool opened last week, and per usual, we had some fun startup surprises, but Katie did a great job problem solving that with Brad and Brian and getting things going. The museum was closed last year because of the highway project, but it is open again this year. Danny Bennett's hanging out in there, so you want to pay him a visit. There's some cool stuff in there.
You know what the hours are? Ish?
I feel like Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, but if Danny has, you know, a conflict or whatever, so it's not necessarily a totally
Catch you when
set
you can.
schedule, but 3 days a week he'll be in
That's the seller's part of the cabin.
there.
If you
The hours, yeah.
wanna email me, I know I've got the Coleman House on our community calendar, so just to help promote that a little
Could
bit.
you include us, because they actually have their phone number listed as our office. So like Memorial Day weekend was wild because everybody and their dog was trying to get into the museum. So that would be helpful for us to know as well.
And I can put it on the community calendar then, like we've got the other one, the Coleman House hours on there.
Sounds good. Pickleball basketball phase 1 is basically completed. Fence is up and cement is completely finished and the electrical
There's
is
nothing
done.
there though that anybody could actually do anything with as far as,
No, there's no nets or
Okay.
anything.
I
It's
didn't
just a
think
concrete pad that's fenced in.
Where are we at with that?
Design.
Where are we at with that?
Well, so phase 2 was the next part with the nets and with the flooring and everything. And we did get $40,000 awarded from the Community Foundation, so a big thank you to the Community Foundation for helping us with that project. So that's on top of the ABC, so that will go towards this phase 2 portion. Kristen was working on a grant for us for that phase 2 as well. I don't know if she has an update.
And that one, it would be fall. I mean, that's notice date is, I think it's a September notice. so you're not going to be able
There's not a whole
to
lot
do
we
anything
can
until
do.
spring.
How much was the grant?
We can put it for the remainder, it'll be the difference.
Which was like
I was gonna say, I think we were like 20,
26,000.
26 or was it 29, I can't remember. But yeah, whatever the difference was. Because you had some
What's
bids
that?
that came in lower.
But with the grant, I mean, the rules of the grant, usually you can't do work until you know your award. So we're kind of probably stuck until we hear what the results of that are.
Give the kids a bunch of chocolate hopscotch in there, at least.
But it's probably gonna have to be a discussion during the budget, you
Yeah.
know, that if you're not awarded the $26,000
Put
or
that in the
whatever.
park budget and finish it off. We do, yeah, it definitely,
It's
by
probably,
early next year, that needs to be operational.
yeah, it's unfortunate that it's probably gonna sit for a little bit until we
Can't
kind
put
of,
like basketball hoops up or something?
not if you want the grant to pay for it.
Okay.
No, you can't do any work prior to award date and receiving the it's no different than LBA 40.
I'm just
You
asking,
don't let them do work.
would even portable hoops, just setting them on there to use the pad? I mean, does that make it, does that,
But see, that's probably a little bit different, I don't know what your insurance is. because
I just like to
it's
see it being used
stuck
up
in
too.
there.
I think that's the same way, there's like, you
Did
got
you
a
get-
pad there, you got a fence around it,
Well, I
it's locked,
think it'd
it's
be a
not locked.
great pad for rollerblades and roller skates and.
Did you
anybody
guys
who wanted-
budget the 50,000 to go in? I mean, do you have the money? Or should we be looking for other grants too?
What money are you talking?
With that last year, Brad, didn't you guys talk about putting 50 away?
Do we put $50,000 in the budget for the park fund?
Well, it's not that you don't have the budget, it's just if you're wanting the grant money,
Right.
you can't do anything, so.
Right, but didn't you guys talk about transferring from the general fund to the park board for that project? Did that
There's money
happen?
in the budget, but again, if you do it, then your grant's kind of out the window.
We'd have to come up with 26, you said, to finish it?
Yeah, let me look. Let me tell you. I never came in.
But again, we can discuss that more in the coming weeks when we do the budget. And then otherwise, I have a conference next week, so I'll be out of the office Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in Lincoln. So I'll be here, getting my continuing education hours.
And no certification.
If that sounds like fun.
It's a delight. It's not that bad, really. It's kind of the same topics
Yeah.
every year. But usually if you learn three, I try to learn 3 new things.
Bring them to the next meeting.
One a day.
Does anybody have any questions for Lisa, or? If not, we're gonna adjourn the meeting at 6:27. Thanks, everybody.